Hello. Nice to meet you. This is Dr. Kim from Richgo. Today, I heard that you are someone who heals at Mediterra Real Estate.
I am the operator of Healing Daytech.
I would like to urgently invite you to discuss the significant changes in the real estate market. Thank you.
Nice to finally meet you.
First of all, I heard that the real estate market has suddenly changed a bit. How has it changed?
The wind feels a bit hot, but it seems like the temperature has dropped a little.
How do you think it has decreased?
A representative indicator of the current flow of the real estate market is the transaction volume. However, the transaction volume that is mostly used in the news comes from sources like the Korea Real Estate Agency or KB Real Estate, and it takes them a long time to compile the data. However, in the case of Richgo, the data is compiled quite quickly, and if we check that rapid compilation, it shows that in June, the transaction volume in Seoul was recorded. Then in July, it was 8,185 cases. However, by mid-July, even before all the data for July was compiled, the number of transactions had already reached around 4,000, almost 5,000. But today, on August 29th, when I checked in mid-August, there were about 700 transactions. And now in August, there are about 1,827 transactions. If we compare it to the transaction volume in July, even in mid-July, the volume had decreased to almost 1/10, and now it is only about 1/4 of what it used to be. So even if it takes 2 to 3 months for the aggregation to be completed, it is a bit difficult to expect that August will show transaction volumes comparable to those of June and July.
Right now, we are filming with the equipment, and we are currently shooting at the end of August. As you mentioned, the data from the Korea Real Estate Agency, or KB Real Estate, is something we look at a few months later. We have looked at the results of this data a bit more quickly, but I don't think it has been influenced by the various recent DSLR policies or regulations.
So it's not that the transaction volume has changed, right? If we look at the flow of the real estate market from the end of May 2024, I think we can divide it into 3 parts. The atmosphere from January to May, the atmosphere at the end of May and in July, and the atmosphere from mid-July to now. Although they are actual buyers, the movement of prices varies depending on how aggressively the actual buyers act. From January to May, when a transaction occurred, prices would increase by 10 to 20 million won, or about 50 million won, based on the actual transaction prices below, and then transactions would gradually happen at the raised prices in a stepwise manner. However, from the end of May to July, the market became so overheated that it could be said to have reached 500 million won without such increments. Immediately after that, properties worth 600 million to 700 million won started appearing. It's not about prices going up 2,000 or 3,000 won or 50 million won, but the price the seller wants. They can expect to receive this much. They raise the price to a greedy level. So when they list it at that price and it doesn't sell, they might hesitate. But at that time, people will think that prices will rise even more due to the supply shortage. Moreover, the reason why buyers in the real estate market are making transactions is not based on a rational economy recovering or having low income rankings, but rather on supply shortages and the expectation that rental prices will continue to rise in the future. People's anxiety created demand, which led to an overheated market where prices skyrocketed up until the end of May and mid-July. People were swept away by an emotionally aggressive demand atmosphere. Would it be correct to say that this is how it appeared? So, what I heard on the ground was that in Mapo, for new constructions in Yeongdong, properties like the Clash in that area had prices drop to as low as 1.5 billion won. It had reached 2 billion and dropped to 1.5 billion. At 1.5 billion to 1.6 billion, real estate owners say this is acceptable. The previous peak was 2 billion won. I said it was cheap to buy, but people were anxious that prices might drop further. They hesitated to buy. However, when it reached 1.9 billion won, everyone wanted to buy. They lined up to make their purchases. So the business owners traded much more at 1.9 billion than at 1.5 billion or 1.6 billion, and people wanted to buy, which actually attracted even more people at that time. The prices in that market increased sequentially from 1.5 billion to 1.6 billion between January and May, but as they moved from 1.6 billion to 1.9 billion and 2 billion, the prices surged by 100 million to 200 million, leading to an overheated market. However, now it is the end of August. Since mid-July, the atmosphere has been somewhat in a state of emergency, and when it rises quickly, the rebound tends to have a significantly opposite effect. As a result, the decline has been quite rapid, with the transaction volume now reduced to almost 1/10, resembling a quarter of what it used to be. The extent of the overheating can be clearly distinguished from the cooling off that is occurring. So, starting from mid-July, inquiries have already decreased, and when people tried to make transactions, a game of psychological tactics began.
Is it already resonating on the ground?
The business owners go and ask about the prices. Sometimes I approach as a buyer, sometimes as a seller, and sometimes as a tenant to gather all the information. When I approach as a buyer, the business owners tell me the prices. Then I have a question that I need to ask. How long should I take to make a decision? They say that because when this comes out, they ask how quickly the property will sell. To put it simply, if this is a property that will sell in a week, then I need to make a decision quickly before that. However, when the owners ask, how quickly do I need to decide on this? How fast will this property sell? I feel like it won't sell that quickly. And now, everyone is being cautious. They think buying now. They might buy at the highest price, so they want to purchase below the actual transaction price. However, since buyers can afford not to sell right now, they display the prices and set them at the levels they desire. But the buyers are anxious. They are worried. They will end up paying the highest price. It seems that there is a lot of tension and competition in the field right now.
Usually, when looking at this real estate, we are in a situation where we don't know whether it will pause now or decline a bit more. Generally, the market sentiment is psychological. It can be seen that people's demand psychology has decreased now. Do you think that Mediterra Real Estate believes the real estate market will see a further decline in prices in the future?
I can say that the once hot market has now entered a period of consolidation. Depending on how the market behaves during this consolidation phase, it could either stabilize and show slight upward movement or potentially decline. I believe that we should keep all possibilities open. Additionally, the outcome can vary depending on which area or complex one is looking at. Right now, Seoul is hot, but the provinces are too cold. So, depending on what you are observing, you need to move accordingly. Speaking specifically about the Seoul real estate market, it is widely acknowledged that the market was overheated from the end of May through June and July, after the period of selection has ended. When we say that the market has overheated, it means that the asset market becomes quite sensitive in this way. So, if a certain variable suddenly emerges, it can have a significant impact and the direction can change at any time. In fact, the most common thing I heard while going around the real estate market this time, especially in the Gangdong-gu area, was that experts were completely wrong. I really heard that a lot. Because when 12,000 units enter Gangdong-gu, it will shake. Even more than when 10,000 units entered Helio City. This is the best entry opportunity in Gangdong. Everyone was really talking about it with liquidity. Right now, properties in Gangdong are going for 2.4 billion to 2.5 billion won. There were people who hesitated to buy when it was around 1.9 billion, thinking it would go lower, and I believe not just myself, but also many experts were quite perplexed about that. However, it seems that predicting the market is a bit difficult because the psychology of the market itself is forming differently now.
However, a decrease in demand does not necessarily indicate an absolute decline in real estate.
That's right.
When you look at it, are there any other important indicators you consider besides the transaction volume, especially when integrated with the field?
We need to look at both prices and transaction volumes together. Right now, the transaction volume has decreased, but prices are not falling. So, it's difficult to say that everything is dead. Rather, the energy has significantly diminished. In fact, if you look at the Richgo flower chart for August, you'll see that the fluctuations in June and July were this much. But in August, it's this much now. So it's not that people aren't thinking, but their movements are really minimal. The fact that the range of fluctuations has significantly decreased indicates that the energy in the market has diminished, and people are hesitating. People are feeling anxious about hitting the highest prices and are hesitating. If I aggressively pursue additional purchases in that situation, I could end up being taken advantage of. So I hope we can approach this with caution. Given that the market dynamics are changing, I want to emphasize the need for careful consideration. Typically, after the current period of adjustment, the atmosphere in the real estate market changes significantly around the holidays. Therefore, it would be good to determine your direction by observing the changes in the atmosphere before and after Chuseok. So, when you hear that they are not going to make additional purchases anyway, doesn't that mean prices will go even higher? However, the current real estate market is not like it was in June or July. It is more of a wait-and-see situation, which allows for some flexibility in actual transaction prices. However, since the current real estate market is not mature enough for sellers to lower their prices, I don't think buyers need to worry about the fear of having to buy at a higher price than now, after observing the situation in the Seoul real estate market. If the prices are similar or the atmosphere is not good, I think it might be possible to buy at an even lower price.
Finally, the transaction volume. Statistics for all areas of Seoul show a decrease, but not all regions are the same, right? Are there any areas where you think the transaction volume has decreased more significantly?
It's actually difficult to enter and exit all 25 districts of Seoul in just 1 week, but in reality, the decrease in transaction volume is also due to a significant reduction in available listings. So, in fact, a considerable number of people withdrew their listings in June and July. Therefore, the data may still show a high volume of listings, but that is actually because real estate owners are putting multiple properties on the market. Some homeowners are listing multiple properties, and among those listings, there are some owners who have reflected the changes, while there are others who have not yet reflected them or are unaware. While there are business owners who check this in real time, there are also those who do not, so these factors can be somewhat aggregated. As a result, the atmosphere on the ground and the data may have a slight temperature difference. However, even though the transaction volume has decreased, prices have not fallen, and the number of listings has neither increased nor decreased, remaining the same. As a result, both sellers and buyers are not in a hurry and are thinking of just waiting and observing. But for those who are currently worried, should they rush to make a purchase now? I'm a bit concerned that in their urgency, they might make hasty decisions. It would be great if they could just be aware that the flow of the market is changing.
Anyway, the transaction volume has only decreased, without a drop in prices. So, it seems that you should be cautious about making impulsive investments. Since regulations and measures have been introduced, they will definitely be reflected in the market.
That's right, when the market is overheated, sensitive.
I also think it might go down a bit more.
Having experienced a historically high number of regulatory policies, I have been observing the real estate market for a long time. And without a doubt, loan regulations have the most significant effect. They greatly influence the real estate market. Moreover, the duration of that period is also appearing to be much longer, and because of the current attempt to reduce the total amount of loans solely due to interest rates, there is some friction between the government and financial authorities. The financial authorities are making efforts to provide detailed total amounts, but if all of that is truly implemented, it will be quite difficult for real estate to rely on loans, which is why rental prices continue to remain high. Since detailed lending regulations are now being implemented by each bank, this may create some difficulties for those looking for JONS, long-term rental housing, which could slightly affect the JONS prices.
Unless the JONS price is in decrease, I might express my perspective as a tenant, thinking, if that's the case, it might be better to just buy a place instead.
However, investors and others do not have unlimited cash reserves, so each person needs to adjust their direction, according to the market situation, and devise a strategy. Yes, understood. Today, we discussed the real estate market, which is showing a somewhat different aspect, particularly noting that the transaction volume has significantly decreased.